Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar brought to you by QuoteWerks and TruMethods. Our title today is Increasing Recurring Revenue Now, a subject that if you are in the IT services business is near and dear to your heart. I'm Gary Pica, the president of TruMethods, and I'm joined today by Brian Lawford, the vice president of QuoteWerks. Hey, Brian.
Hey, Gary.
How are you?
I'm very good, very good. Right in the middle of trade show season, so it's a good time for us.
Busy, right? That's great. So, Brian, today I'm happy. We invited both of our audiences today to talk about recurring revenue sale, and you've been there helping people with sales enablement with QuoteWerks for like 20 years, right?
Thanks for saying 20 years, but yes, we've definitely been.
Well, you were 11.
Helping.
I'm going to say that you were 11.
Yeah, but no, seriously, we've been working with the community for a long time, helping them increase their revenue, definitely through enabling them to create recurring revenue quotes.
Great. So a couple quick housekeeping, and then we're going to dive right in because we got a lot to cover. Although we're not going to share the slides today, we are recording this, so everyone who registered and attended will in the next 24 hours receive an email with a link so you can rewatch this. So if you want to just listen and not worry about taking notes and just be in the moment with it, you'll be able to rewatch it afterwards. And if you have any questions, put them into the go-to webinar question pods, and we'll be looking at them. We'll answer them as we go. If not, we'll try to answer as many as we get to the end. Okay. I want to put in perspective what we're going to talk about today with sales and specifically recurring revenue. When we look at top MSPs, we call them world-class MSPs, the top 5%, we find that there are really 5 principles where they put their time, money, and energy. One is business planning. The second one is packaging and pricing, which we'll touch on today. The third is our topic today, which is sales focus. The fourth is being process-driven, and the fifth is command, having command over your cross-drivers, value proposition, and those kind of things. And this is what we've built at TruMethods, our coaching program around. And so, Brian, one of the things I want to mention as we start, and I'm going to start off by asking, showing some reality for MSPs, but everything we're going to talk about today, none of it's based on theory. So this is based on your experience in this channel for well over a decade, and also for me, my experience having built one MSP to 7,000 endpoints, which was acquired. Over the last 3 years, having built a second one that I don't work in because I work at TruMethods every day. As well as day-to-day working with over 500 MSPs in our coaching program. So this is all stuff and no fluff around these areas. So here's the reality for most MSPs. Profit margins are not what they expected. Brian, would it shock you if I told you that the average IT provider's margins have not really changed that much over the past 4 or 5 or 6 years, considering all the work they've done to change their model? That kind of stinks, doesn't it?
It does, and unfortunately, it doesn't surprise me.
Right, and here's why. Because adding MRR, monthly recurring revenue, is hard, like much harder than people thought that it would be. They thought it would be the field of dreams, like if you build it, they will come. And then prices are too low, and we're going to talk about why. Like one of them is an issue to do with offerings. The other one is sales. But we're going to talk about why people aren't able to command the pricing that the top MSPs, the world-class people, do. And because of all these factors, for business owners, achieving a level of financial independence from this business, it has been the exception to the rule. So what we want to do in the next hour is raise your expectations about what's possible. Because, Brian, you and I both have people, customers, partners in every single marketplace, right? There isn't a marketplace where they're not either a TruMethods member or using QuoteWerks that we see get results that are far above the average, correct?
That is very true. Very true.
So when I do my live presentations on this, I usually start off by asking 2 questions. The first one is this: how many people uh, feel like adding new recurring revenue to their business is one of, if not the very top thing they need to do this year. If there's 150 people in this room, Brian, guess how many hands go up?
I'd say about 149.
Exactly. Right. Everybody raises their hand. And then I qualify it and say, well, how good are you at it? Like, how many of you can add, let's say, some like on average, at least $2,000, $2,000 or $3,000 of MRR, new MRR each month, and a handful of hands go up. And then I say that aren't TruMethods members, and there's maybe a couple. So how is it we have an industry where everyone can agree on what their top goal is, but very, very few people can do it, Brian? It's crazy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So what we want to answer is this: why can't you sell new monthly recurring revenue consistently? When you're in front of prospects, why do some of them say it sounds great, but they're not paying you today, right? Even though they said, because most people don't ever say to you after you go out and make your presentation, wow, Brian, that was really a horrible presentation. Your company sounds really stupid, right?
Right. That's really funny. Yeah, it's very true. I mean, it really does not make sense why they don't buy.
Yeah, and they never say that because one thing I know about most of the people that I deal with in this industry, they're good people, they care about their employees, they care about their customers, they're smart business people, they know about technology. It just doesn't translate into sales and sales at the right price. And so why is growing MRR at the right price so hard? And I've broken it down over 20 years of studying this, okay? And I have both failed miserably, and I've succeeded wildly in driving recurring revenue sales. Succeeding wildly was much more fun, but sometimes you have to go through the former to get to the latter. There's three things that everyone needs to do, whether you are starting and you have zero recurring revenue, or whether you already have $300,000 a month, and to get to the next level, you need to do some things differently in terms of how much you sell and the price you sell out in order to grow from there. These three things apply to everybody who's listening today. One, you have to have the right support offering. I could spend 6 hours on this. In fact, in our coaching program, in our initial startup kit, called our starter kit, we spend about half of that initially. That's how important it is, but we'll touch on it. Two, meet the right number of target prospects. We'll give you the theory about how you need to look at that so you can make some changes. And then we'll get to the big thing people want to hear, which is how do you have the right conversation, right? And how do you have a repeatable conversation and a process so that you can start to get predictable results? So let's start with your support offering. Man, this is at the center. If you sell recurring revenue, your support offering is the center. Brian, I'll take it a step further and say that if I meet an MSP for the first time and they hand me their support offering and pricing, and I look at it, I can tell you what their margins are, their sales struggles, their culture. I can tell you a lot about them just from looking at it. And here's some of the key things. One, you need to focus on the end result, not the technology. What end result, what experience are you trying to deliver to every single customer, every one of them? And then how much do you have to charge based on the people and resources, the process you want to use, the technology, and how much time is going to be required to deliver that experience? And if you think about it in that way, if someone came to you, Brian, and said, look, I don't know about technology, Brian, you do. What's the best way to do it? How much will it cost? The answer to that question is what you should be selling every single prospect, every single client. Because if you're not, you're selling them less than what you know is the best, probably because you're saying, they're asking you for something different. So if you do that, you have to limit choices. I see people that got bronze, silver, gold, pewter, tin, diamond. You could have it with or without backup, with or without virus. I look at it and I don't know what I would buy, right? And when I ask them, well, what's the right one? What's the one that if they chose that one, you could really do your best job. You could lower their noise. You could reduce their risk. You could solve all the things they told you that were the pains of why they were changing. They say, well, this one. Well, why do you have all the rest? Well, that's what people will buy. But we know that they're not because people aren't selling as much. So I know that most people say the customer is always right, but I feel like in my time in this business that we are in a business where the customer is almost always wrong, and we're the ones that have to tell them, Brian, right? We got to deliver the bad news that you can't get the results you want your way. You have to let us do it our way, and that means bundling services and presenting things in a way where you can equate what you're doing to a different end result, and they can see it clearly. And I'm going to give you some more hints. One specific hint that changed my business on how to do that. And then remove entrance barriers. Don't make it really difficult and risky for people to do business with you. You want to bring them on and you want to scale, and the more endpoints you have at the right price, the lower your risk is. Does that all make sense, Brian?
Definitely does.
Okay, so this is a good segue. I want to take a minute and I want to talk just really briefly about QuoteWerks, about QuoteWerks, and then really talk about how this fits into the topic of sales that we're talking about today. So why don't you just give a little background on QuoteWerks?
Yeah, so QuoteWerks truly does solve the pain points that you have when it comes to creating quotes and proposals. And the reason I can say that is because we've been around for over 20 years. We know who you are because we were you. We were founded back in 1993 by John Liu when he was a VAR himself, and there was no quoting solution out there to help him compare prices between distributors, create a professional-looking presentation. And so that's where QuoteWerks really grew out of. And that's actually where I came from as well. I mean, before coming on to QuoteWerks, I was a VAR myself for several years. And that's why we can really say that we know who you are. And, we can talk about features all day long. I mean, those are very important to us here at QuoteWerks. But really, it comes down to three things when it comes to QuoteWerks. It's our integrations. We integrate with more distributors. Right now, we're working with over 20 different distributors. We make it very easy for you to create those quotes and see the prices from those different distributors. We work with over all the major PSAs, all the CRM packages that you're working with. So those are very important. And then also price. I mean, price really is the driving factor. We want to make sure that you're seeing an ROI on whatever solution you do implement. So we are the most affordable solution out there. And then number three, and that's really what we're talking about today as well, is support. You can pick up the phone and give us a call. And so those are really the three things that are most important to us.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to mention here, so I used QuoteWerks in my first business, Dynamic Digital Services, and I use it today, right? We're a customer in our current business, is that there's two pieces to this. You guys have gone a long way in terms of the recurring revenue, right? So being able to package those quotes in a way where you can show any level of bundling, right, that you need to in terms of how you're going to relate your pricing calculator to your quotes and then eventually how you'll bill, correct?
Exactly. And I mean, the customer does not need to see what backup solution you're using. The customer doesn't need to see what RMM solution you're using, but you need to have all that information flow back up to your CRM, all the PSA, ConnectWise or Autotask or whatever you're using, and also all the way through accounting. So you can do what you need to do from the quoting perspective, but we also work on the back end as well to make sure that it flows through to your solutions.
Last thing I want to mention before we move past this, and then people can get more information. Your phone number's here, and also they can email sales@quoteworks.com, and you have a discount that you have through May 15th. So, but I want to mention one more thing because I've been seeing this recently. I have a lot of my members I work closely with that they're a lot bigger now. Like they've doubled or tripled their recurring revenue, and one of the issues that some of them are having who haven't matured in how they're quoting the non-recurring services, because they're out there, right, with technology consultants and VCIOs really getting to a higher level of business conversation. What comes out of that is recommendations, and I see it getting stuck. And one of the reasons why is they don't have a way of capturing that knowledge of past quotes that he did in such a way that they can do them quickly or with the right people. They have either have their VCIO who's expensive and needs to do other things in consulting, or the people that do the implementation that are billable doing it, rather than being able to make it more of we call it design desk or more of an administrative role, because after a while, the proposals are 80%, right, the same. And so, yeah, if you're not able to get things turned around quickly, this is one thing. I mean, to me, QuoteWerks is just like having a PSA and an RMM. It's part of the business operating system, I would say.
Exactly, exactly.
So if you're not there and you're not using QuoteWerks, send an email. They do an awesome job. Like I said, I've been working with them for many, I don't even know how many years, probably since the very beginning for you, with a great experience.
Definitely. And the other thing too, I mean, we are real people, so if you have questions, give us a call. You know, we've been in your shoes. We'll be able to answer any questions that you have.
Awesome. Okay. So let's continue. And I said that I would tell you one thing. If you want to sell more, have a higher close ratio, okay? And if you want to get people to spend more with you than they'd spend for other options, you have to build what we teach. It's called a superpower. Here's what it is. You have to be able to clearly explain how you deliver a higher level of support. And real quick, again, I'd like to spend hours on this, but we want to get to talk about lead generation and the sales conversation. But this one point will kind of give you an idea where you are. Look at your support offering right now and ask yourself, how much of what you're selling clients that you're bundling today or selling them is what I call everybody stuff. Everybody does support. Everybody does the RMM stuff. Everybody monitors. Everybody has cloud backup. Everybody has help desk. Everybody has cloud-related services because they're available in the channel. How much of what you're selling is what everybody else is selling, and you're just telling people that you're doing it better? And how much of it is your unique approach, your process, your people, your resources, your best practice and standards? And can you explain those things in a way that people can see a clear difference? I call it separation. If you can't create separation, and when we talk about the sales process, our sales process is based on enhancing that separation, but you actually have to deliver something that is unique. Because when I ask people why do they buy from you, the most common things I get are, well, we have better people. We have great experience. We're trusted. We care about our customers. But everyone can say that, right? No one goes in. Your competitor is not going in and saying, listen, it's nice to meet you. First thing I got to say, look, our people are good. They're not great. You know, I'd like to say we're proactive, but, you know, frankly, we create as many problems as we solve. No one's saying that. So here's what you do real quick, okay? And we spend a lot of time on this with our members up front, because if they get this right, everything else makes sense. You have to create a role and a process for this superpower. In other words, you have to develop your standards, and you have to continuously align your client's technology with those standards, and then base all of your technology consulting, or the industry term is VCIO, virtual CIO process, on these misalignments. So if you don't create a role and a process, then and everybody in your business are the same roles that everybody else has on that everybody stuff, I'm not saying you can't grow. You're just going to really be fighting uphill all the time. Does that make sense, Brian?
Definitely does.
Okay. Well, let's keep going. Let's talk about, I'm going to tell one quick story about this, and then we'll talk about lead generation. And then when we talk about the sales conversation, I think this will make even more sense. We can tie it back. So let me tell you a quick story. I got a member who calls me one day, and he's like, Gary, I just signed a contract for $3,000 a month to a client. And I'm like, well, that's great, but we got a lot of members. They sell a lot of MRR. He's like, no. This one's different. He said, I was out there a year ago, and I pitched him at 1,800, and they said no. And I said, well, what changed? He said, I did. This time when I went, I didn't talk about our everybody stuff. I talked about our unique process. He was able to see how that was going to impact all the issues that he was having the first time I met him, and are still having when he picked a different vendor and nothing changed. And he said when he got out to his car with that signed agreement, he said to himself, wow, it's easier to sell the right program at the right price than the wrong offering at the wrong price. And I said, well, I've been telling you that on webinars twice a month for a year. And he said, I know, but I didn't believe you. So, welcome to my world. Okay, so we talked about support offering. Next, let's talk about lead generation, or meeting the right number of target prospects. Here's where it starts, and people skip over this, and this is one of the big mistakes they make. It starts with setting goals. Starting with your life and business plan, right? You got to start with where you want to be in 10 years, what your 3-year targets, and then what your 1-year goals are, because your sales goals need to support your business plan. The second thing is you need to convert that plan to an annual MRR goal. How much monthly recurring revenue do you want to add this year? You know, Brian, when I ask people, hey, and I do every week, hey, what are your goals? I get answers like, well, I'd like to be able to, get out of the day-to-day and work on the business instead of in it. I'd like to, we have 10 employees. We want to get to 15. I don't know why you want to do that, right?
Right.
Or, we're at 1 million and we want to get to 2 million. And no matter what the answer is, what I always say is convert it to an MRR goal. We have to have a goal, right? We have to have a goal that is specific, and MRR is the one that we can build our plan around. So whatever your goal is, convert it into a monthly recurring revenue goal. Next, and I'm going to show you how to do this, determine the number of FTAs, or first-time appointments. How many new prospects do you have to sit in front of over this year and have a conversation with in order to get the right amount of MRR? And that's going to be impacted by 2 things. What percentage of them you close, or your close ratio, and what's the average deal size, right? You have to do, all things being equal, you have to be in front of twice as many first-time appointments with the same close ratio if your average is $1,500 a month than it is if it's $3,000. And then be sure your goal is achievable. And here's kind of how you can check it, Brian. We have something we use in our coaching program called the sales goal calculator, right? And what this is you put in how much monthly recurring revenue you want to sell this year, and what your average contract value is, and what your projected close rate is. And then it tells you, okay, if you want to sell $24,000, that's about $2,000 a month, about 1 customer a month, or 13 customers for the year. Now, first off, if you're in this business, your goal should never be lower. Again, this should be the minimum goal that anyone should have. So sometimes I ask people they don't have a goal, or I ask them about it, they have a goal, but when I ask them questions like, okay, you want to sell 24,000 this year, in order to do that, you need to have about 4 or 5 clients worth $8,000 a month in your pipeline at any given time. Do you have that strength of PBR today? No. In order to get and maintain that based on your close ratio, you'll need to go on about 53 appointments, about 5 a month, or a little more than 1 a week. Okay? So with that, if you have not taken it further and broken it down, it's really more of a hope, because you don't really go after 2,000 a month. What you do is you go after 5 appointments, what you have, the activities that support those 5 FTAs a month, and then track your close ratio so that you can manage the math. The result of it is you close a deal a month for 2,000. Does that make sense, Brian?
Definitely does.
Yeah, I gotcha. Let me see. We got a question here. Someone says, is it realistic to actively close 25% of leads? I can see if they're referrals versus pure leads. Do you think many people are unhappy with their present IT solution, which is based on a presentation if they have no specific pain point? You know what? Well, let me answer the first part of it, and I think our sales presentation will answer, or what we're going to talk about here will answer the second piece. Close ratios, you should be able to be in that 25% close ratio, but it's influenced by some things, and I'm glad you asked that question, because we're going to talk directly to that now. And it's this: cold versus warm leads. So cold leads are maybe you're not selling much today, you don't have a great database because of it, you don't get a lot of referrals, and so most of the leads you get are pretty cold leads. A lot harder to close those leads, okay? especially in the beginning if you haven't established your value, you don't have a lot of customers paying the right price that you want to charge. Warm leads are people that have a need. So we'll talk about some ways you generate those, even beyond referrals, how to get more referrals in a different kind of way. And then the way you get that close ratio is you develop what I call returning prospects. So you build a funnel of people that you have spoke to and almost sold in the past that didn't buy from you for whatever reason, probably your fault, and then for whatever, we stay in contact with them, and when the timing's right, we re-engage, and those have a really high close ratio. And so understanding this and thinking about it in terms of this funnel, which is at the top are suspects. That's where most people live. They're really cold people that don't have a lead and they don't even know if they fit your criteria of a great customer. Prospects are people that at least you know they fit your criteria. Your warm 250 are a few hundred accounts that you've actually engaged with at some level where you feel like they're a perfect fit, and when the timing is right and you re-engage, they're going to be a high close ratio. And the hot ones are the ones that however they got to you, you're working with them right now. Brian, what happens is that most people's sales funnel only has the top and the bottom. They got the people that they're working with right now, and they got a bunch of cold leads, and that's why they struggle. And they never. You should be able to sell more more next year than this year, every single year. But that only comes if you're building your prospects and warm 250, the things that are in the center. So, what are the lead generation sources? Well, there's marketing sources like event marketing, direct marketing, email marketing, but they require a quality list. So if you only have the people you're working with and a lot of cold suspects, your return on investment might not be what you need it to be here. Once you build the middle of that funnel and the bottom of that funnel, so in my MSP, 3 years ago, our list was horrendous. We generated almost no leads. We spent almost no time on this. Today, we have an awesome list, and I'm going to tell you how we got it. We built an awesome list. Now we do all of these things because we can. Am I making my mark on this one, Brian?
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about all the things that we do as well, so I definitely understand what you're talking about.
Absolutely. Okay. So here's some warm lead sources. This is really important. The first one is critical, COIs or centers of influence. You need to develop people in your marketplace that have the same target market that you do, that know what a good prospect and what a need looks like, that can bring you in the people at the right time. Now, these are not easy to find and develop. So at my MSP, the young guy, he's in his early 30s, that's the president. When I first got there, a little over 3 years ago, and I knew we needed not a lot of leads, but we needed some warm ones, I started him. He had to meet with one potential new center of influence every week. Now, that's not easy to do. It's work. And the reason why the volume has to be that high in the discipline is that, you know, you have to sort through a lot of them, or I like to say you have to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince. And so over time, as you start to get a few of these that really work with each other, and you find other business leaders that are looking to grow their business in the right kind of way, the same way you are, these are awesome high close ratio type things. And of course, you could do referral programs, and we teach a process on leveraging LinkedIn. SEO and pay-per-click, everyone should be trying to maximize that. So you can do those things to generate some warm leads. And then inside sales. We have 75 inside salespeople in a community we call Inside Sales Champions, where we teach them how to make a volume of phone calls, how to have conversations every day. And part of it is they set appointments, right? So they're trying to set an appointment, you know, pretty much every day. But that's not all the value. A lot of the value comes from that they are creating that funnel. They're taking all these other areas of marketing, they're following up on all those, and they're really building those prospects and warm 250s. And so now we had one person doing it, then we added a second. So we have this rich database of people that we've talked to. They know us and we know them. So our starting point for everything we do with sales and lead generation is just completely at another level than it was 3 years ago. So in the beginning, again, right, you want to be realistic about your starting point. And if you're not selling a lot, if you don't have a great database, you got to make sure you have discipline around warm lead sources. because they're the deals you're going to close right now. And then when you can afford it, you invest in inside sales, and over time, you'll not only get more activity, but you'll build up that database so you can do other marketing things, and you will build a steady stream of returning prospects, people you've dealt with once or twice, that when you get in front of them, your chances of closing them at the right price go up dramatically. And I know people would rather just feel like they could go out and buy some generic list and send out one email, and all of a sudden people line up that want to buy their stuff. But Brian, obviously it doesn't work that way.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. It would make it a lot easier if it did.
Yeah. And this is someone like, there's Matt, who I know, is saying, what if there are no leads at all? Well, then what you need to do is, again, focus on those centers of influence. You got to start somewhere, man, and you got to do something. And for most people that are in this spot, here's the thing. That's why we give everybody, we help them develop a playbook, and we make sure that they have a sales meeting every week, even if they're the only ones at it, which, by the way, Brian, for the first couple years of my first MSP, I was the only one at my sales meeting. And it got ugly some weeks, right?
Yep.
I had to square myself up. Here's the point. If you're in that spot, there's a good chance, man, that you are up to your ears in your business. You have tickets and issues, and you got to bill, and you got to make payroll, and you got to pay your bills this month. So the way to turn that around is you decide, what are the high-value things I need to do? And maybe it's in the beginning, it's only an hour or two a week. That's all you can do. But you do it on the high-value things, and then you let a week and a month and a quarter go by, and all of a sudden, bang, one good lead and one deal comes in, right? And then you take it from there. Like my dad always used to tell me that if nothing changes, then what will change? So we teach you how to make, wherever you are, whether you're generating, we put people into categories. They generate nothing to $2,000 a month, $2,000 to $4,000 a month, or above $4,000. And each of those needs to, it's the same process, but they need to focus on different parts of this. Here's the good news. More leads, I can assure you, is not the issue. Unless you don't have any leads. So I'm not being a wise guy. What I'm saying is, if you don't have any leads, it just means that you either don't understand how to get them, or you don't have the discipline. But once you do a couple things, and you do them religiously every week with discipline, and you let some time go by, Brian, everyone who does that, they might not generate as many leads as they want, but everyone can generate more leads. They think that's going to be the solution to the problem, because today they're in front of so few people that are really almost closed, or so closely referred that they're almost closed. So they think that anytime they get in someone, they're going to close them. But as you start to generate more leads, the real issue becomes our last piece, which is sales process, or having the right conversation. So that's what we want to go on to next. We got a couple questions, but I think we'll circle back at the end of those. Let's wait a minute here. All right, so I want to tell a quick story about the best failure, like the most important failure I ever had. I realized at some point that our model had to change early on in my first business, and managed services was brand new. The phrase might not even have been coined. The first PSA and the first RMM were just really in their first versions, and I saw that recurring revenue was the way, so we invested early, and I got in front of my whole company and told them that this was our future, that we were all in on recurring revenue and changing our model. And I spent a lot of time with our packaging and pricing. I made it way too complex. I tied myself up like a pretzel, and then finally I just said, all right, I got to put my pencil down. I got to leave my office, and I got to go talk to someone. And what better way to start than start with one of our customers that already liked us? So I went out to see one of my customers. I said, hey, how are we treating you? And he said, Gary, you're treating us really well. We like you. Everything runs great. Your people are good. We're happy. And I said, well, if you like us now, you're going to love us, because we've invested in some tools, and we're going to be proactive. We're going to find problems before they even happen. We're going to pat you, spy you, spam you, back you up. He's like, wow, that sounds great. He's like, how much is it? I said, that's the best part. It's only $2,000 a month, and you can call me as much as you want. Brian, he didn't even take a breath. He said, Gar, that's 24 grand a year. I spent 18 grand with you last year. I already told you that I'm happy. Why would I spend more? So I figured, well, let me go back and tell him again, but this time I'm going to speak a little louder and I'm going to slow it down a little bit, right? Did you just not hear me say we're going to be proactive? So I went out to my car and I said it only took one sales meeting to find a problem with MSP sales. Customers are stupid. Well, as it turned out, somebody there that day was stupid, but it wasn't my customer. It was me. In fact, he was a genius because he asked me the most important question that I've ever been asked in my business career. Our IT is fine. Why would we change, or why would we spend more? And literally when I learned to answer this question, it in a very short amount of time, it changed my business, and eventually, Brian, it changed my life. So we'd like to give everybody the answer to that question, but it looks like we're out of time. No, I'm teasing. We're not really out of time. We're gonna give you the answer to the question, because that would be cruel. All right. Here's what it is, and I've come up with a term that I use in my coaching program I call reframing. What I figured out is that my customer that day, and almost all of the 14 or 1,500 prospects that I've been in front of in my life, they have a different definition about two really critical things than we do. This is where the disconnect is, and it's fine and costs. See, they have a different definition of what they think is fine, and they don't really know what the real cost of IT is. So what I want to do is, first, let's talk about their definition, and then we'll talk about our definition, and then this process of reframing, which we have to reframe their frame of reference. Well, we'll start with their definition because it's really simple. It only really has two things. They're fine. Nothing crashes, and their vendor calls us back. Brian, things don't crash that much, right? Downtime is not what costs most companies money. You don't want to hang your hat on downtime. It is being less productive, having too many tickets, too much noise, backups. There's 100 other things that are really, really, really expensive that everybody experiences. Everyone experiences if you know how to find them. But things crashing isn't the major one. And then our vendor calls us back. Pretty much all my customers, no matter whether they make money or not, they call their customers back in this business, right? That's what we're paid to do. So by that definition, and then if you look at IT support costs, they usually equate that to what if they have an in-house person, what they spend with them, or the bill from their current IT vendor. And, what percentage of overall IT costs really is just that bill from the vendor? We have very different costs. So by this definition, almost everybody we meet is fine. And it's kind of the question that somebody was asking, which is, how do you have those close ratios if everybody doesn't have pain? Well, they don't under their definition, but most people do. I've learned have some degree of pain under our definition. We expand fine to include predictable performance, increased functionality, reducing their risk, lowering capital costs over time, increasing their overall productivity and their competitiveness, all of those things, okay, and how they all impact their biggest cost, which is people, okay? And part of how you do this, Brian, is how I learned is how you ask questions. Because their frame of reference is different, if you ask the question, for example, hey, so you have 30 users here, 20 here, 10 in the field on laptops, everybody's really dependent on their computers throughout the day. How's performance? I mean, 9 times out of 10 they say, fine, it's fine. But if you ask a different way and say, look, PCs and especially laptops, they always slow down a little bit over time. How does your current vendor deal with that? Well, when things start to slow down, we just put in a ticket and then they come in and they run some tools and they take care of it. And then I say, well, let me ask you, I'm guessing that your people they probably wait until they absolutely have to before they break the glass on having to give up their workstation for even a short amount of time. Am I close? Yeah, I guess so. Well, let me ask you this. What if those workstations and laptops ran at the exact same level of performance, right? From the time you got them until the time it was to move to the next generation. Would that have any impact on your people? Would that have any? And sometimes they say no, that's good to know. Sometimes they say yes, that's a great response. But most times, Brian, the answer I get in the real world is maybe. And that means they attached some value to that. Do you see the difference by how you ask a question, how dramatically different the result is?
I think it's night and day.
Yeah, yeah. And so here's the whole thing that people have to understand. This comes from the book Predictably Irrational. That green dot, those two green dots are exactly the same size. But the one on the left side that's surrounded by smaller blue dots, it looks larger because it's large relative to those blue dots, okay? That's your support offering. If you surround your support offering with smaller blue dots, you're $2,000 a month, okay? And in my scenario, my customer is paying $1,800 a month. My green dot looks huge. But if I start to surround it with bigger costs, I mean, look, even small customers that have 10, 20, 30 employees, they're spending between $100,000 and $300,000 a month just in people costs. And then besides the other overhead in their business, they have hundreds of thousands of dollars of cost every month. And we're a couple thousand relative to their big costs. And if we can show them how our investment will impact those big costs, do you think they really care whether it costs $2,000 a month or whether it costs $1,000 if they understood and believed that you would impact them in all that way? I can tell you, Brian, again, after being on, well over 1,000, probably 1,500 sales calls, price is not the issue. There's other issues, right, you have to deal with in qualifying people, but if you feel like the main thing you're up against is price, then you have an issue both with your packaging and your offering, your ability to convey it, and then your ability to refrain people. Powerful stuff. All right, so let's get down to it. How do you refrain people? Number one, paint a picture. This is so critical, okay? You start to ask questions in the right way, and you find out that they have a different definition in our example of performance than we do. What most people want to do is immediately start selling technology. Oh, that's because your vendor does things the old crappy way. We do things the new cool way. We're going to install an agent. We're going to clear out temp files. You start telling them everything about what you do or how you do it. I didn't say one of those things. All I did was, when I helped the client or the prospect uncover this difference, I just painted a picture about what his people and his productivity, what his business looks like today, and then I painted a picture of what it would look like if he was my customer, right? Do you see the difference there, Brian, about not selling them?
Yeah.
Okay? Then the second thing you do is you attach a value to that picture. So in sticking with our example, what I might have said was, well, look, I haven't showed you what we do or how we do it, but assuming that what I'm telling you, because we have 50 or 60 other clients we do it for, is true in terms of what they experience, and you knew that to be true, based on our conversation, we're going to be about $600 a month more. If you knew you could get that result, would you invest $600 a month more? They might say no. That's good to know early, right, in the sales cycle. They might say yes. That's a really great sign. Most of the time in the real world, they say, yeah, maybe I might. And what that means is I just attached a value. If you can refrain me in one or two other areas, you have shrunk down your green dot, right, to the point at which I don't have to make the decision with price as the main driver. we actually begin to use price as our advantage. I always want to be more than their other alternatives, and I want the difference in what they're going to spend with someone else and what they're going to spend with us to be the reason. Because I'm going to equate that. Remember I said, Brian, we're going to build a superpower, a role, and a process where we can show them how we get different results. I'm going to equate the delta in investment back to that so they can logically see why they couldn't get those results for less. But I can't do it if all I'm sitting there is just talking about selling them technology, the same technology that every single person has, right? Whether you're a company with 50 employees in this business or whether you're 2 people, you have access to a lot of the same technology, right? Small companies, Brian, we used to call them 2 guys in a ponytail, right? Today we call them 2 guys and an Amazon web server. Things have changed, and the entrance to get in, right, isn't as high. This is why in order to refrain people, in order to make traction, in order to get separation, you got to create what I talked about, which is that superpower. Is this all making sense? Let me tell a story that sums this up, and then we'll answer some questions. Another member calls me up. It's been a few years since I got this phone call, but I kept the slide in because it has so much meanings about what people experience and what they can experience. And he said, hey, Garrett, I just picked up an agreement for $2,200. Again, I said, that's great. We have a lot of members, closed a lot of agreements. I'm happy for you. But he's like, no, listen to this situation. I went out there last week on Wednesday, and I met with one of the partners. And I sat with him for 2 hours, and I was awesome. At the end of the meeting, he said, this sounds great. Come back on Friday when my partner is here and pick up the signed agreement. Friday, I walk in, and as soon as he greets me in the office, he says, hey, dude, we got a problem. My partner got somebody else referred to him. They can do basically the same thing for $1,500. And so my member said, well, what are you going to do? And his prospect said, well, I want you to come in. I want you to meet my partner and go over again all the great things you do because I still think you're better. And he said, Garrett, before I met you, that's exactly what I would have done. To which I said, now you have my attention. What did you do? And he said, I thought about it for a second, and then I said to him, listen, there's one of 2 situations. One situation is that you don't need $2,200 results. You only need $1,500 results, in which case you should just buy it today and enjoy your weekend. The other scenario is you think you can get $2,200 results for $1,500. Which is it? And he said the prospect looked at him and froze for like 20 seconds. And finally he said, I'm not really sure which. He walked back into the office with the other partner, and 45 minutes later he walked out with a $2,200 agreement. So what happened in that 45-minute meeting that didn't happen in his awesome 2-hour meeting? Well, he didn't spend all his time on a referral. He assumed that they were sold, just telling him how great he was. He went through and explained what was different about them, why they charge more, how that investment and that process and that they were going to do was going to impact his business, their noise, their productivity, their risk, all the things they were concerned about. He showed them the difference between $2,200 and $1,500 support and just said, look, I don't know what you need, but here's what's different about them. And the prospect came to the decision that they wanted the results of that $2,200. And to me, this is kind of what separates, this logic is what separates the haves today in our industry from the have-lesses. So here's when you're building the sales engine. 1, I hope I impressed upon people today, Brian, you got to package your support offering for success, right? That it's critical. Before you even leave your office, if you make mistakes there, you're just fighting uphill. 2, you got to know your math so that you can create accountability around activity and drive on a weekly basis, a little bit of change based on where you are in your business. And have that lead generation plan, knowing you're doing the right things that feed into that math. And then finally have a sales process. I mean, I'd love you to use ours, the TruMethods process, and I think it's the best, but even if you use a different one, I just want you to have a repeatable process that you know exactly what you're doing every time you meet a prospect, and you could explain to someone else exactly what it is and where you are in that process. If not, it's not going to be repeatable. So whether you're a startup and don't have any customers, or whether you have $500,000 a month like I did in my first MSP, and like I have members that I coach today, you still have to do these three things. You have to have the right support offering, you have to get in front of the right number of target prospects based on your goal, and you got to have the right conversation that we described today. So look, go out there, build that superpower, create a competitive advantage, change your expectations, and get started. Brian, I think you would agree to this, looking at all of the customers you deal with. More recurring revenue is being sold right now at a higher price than ever before in our industry. Would you agree?
I definitely would.
Average prices are higher than they were, and also average, because of the bundled, we're selling them more services, the average amount each customer spends is higher today than it was in the past. So a lot of great things happening. If you're not experiencing it, probably somewhere in this webinar, if you listen to it again, are the seeds of what has to change. So, all right, we have a few minutes. I'm going to real quick tell you a little bit about TruMethods and make people an offer, and then we have some great, don't leave because we got some great questions up here that I want to answer. So, why do people do business with, why do we have so many members around the world? We're a proven business transformation process. So if you're looking to develop that competitive advantage or that superpower, we will take you through step by step how to do it. We'll show you how to consistently, everything you need to do to build recurring revenue, to dramatically increase not just sales but profitability. And so we are for people that are ready to achieve a level of financial independence. And we do it in two ways. One is our onboarding or starter kit. It's 8 weeks. You'll have 4 one-on-one calls where someone will guide you through our process, where you'll have 12 hours of video training over that 8 weeks with tools and templates. And during that time, you'll align your packaging and pricing with world-class standards. You'll begin the development of your superpower. You'll have a detailed sales plan, lead generation plan. You'll have a business plan. You'll have calibrated your business on 20 smart numbers that we have about what your starting point is in sales and profitability and other areas of your business. And you'll have higher expectations about, what you can achieve. Once you're through that, you get onto our monthly program with his growth tracks, where daily I send out audio messages for motivation. Monthly, we have 2 webinars, one on sales and one on service delivery, operations, leadership, business planning, those topics, success topics. Quarterly, we have a webinar that is a QBR where we take you through a checklist of all the business planning, all the numbers you need to look at, all the smart numbers. We take you through step by step of every quarter what you should be looking at and planning. And then annually, we, in the fall, help everybody through our webinars are focused around how to get ready for the next year with business planning. So over the course of time, and I have people been with me since 2009 when we launched, you're going to implement that superpower. You're going to have access to over 90 hours of role-based content for all the webinars we've done over the past 5 years. You can ask questions anytime on the website portal to Ask TruMethods. There's tools and resources. There's advanced training. And coming very soon will be a TruMethods mobile app where you'll be able to download content to your handheld device. So normally that startup is $22.95, and our monthly fee is $3.99. So that should be 4115 there. There's a little typo. But right now we have a special offer. We will waive the upfront, and it's just $3.49 a month. So all you do, Brian, is we send you to sign up. You put your credit card in for $3.49 a month, and we're month to month. All those members I told you about, they're nice enough to allow us to hit their credit card every month. Many of them for 3, 4, 5 years. They do it because they feel they're better with us than without us. None of them because they have a term agreement. So if you're interested, we can offer this to the first 10 people who email gary.promo@trumethods.com. That's TRU methods, no E in true. Gary.promo@trumethods.com with the subject line, sign me up. And again, maybe the first 10 people, and take advantage of it over the next couple days. It expires this month. Okay? Brian, we got a couple questions. One is, hey, how do you explain building your playbook in the summary. So Clifford, here's what building a playbook is. We come up with those activities that you need to track, okay? And we have a template that people use, but you can build your own in a spreadsheet, which is if you have inside sales, how many dials, contacts, and appointments? If you're doing centers of influence, how many people per week and per month or per quarter do you want to be in front of? If you're doing marketing or attend marketing events, so what are those activities that you want to do? And then you track them on a daily and weekly basis and allow that roll up so you can see your results on a daily, weekly, monthly, and then on a year-to-date basis, so that if you're not getting the results you want, you can easily troubleshoot it. I don't have enough activity. My close ratio is not what it should be. You can go and look at the factors that impact that, and you know where to spend your time in order to troubleshoot the system. Critical. Everybody needs a playbook if they want to grow. If they want to grow sales. Next question. Would you ever agree to a contract without a limited liability clause if the client does not want to agree with? So that's a detailed question. Listen, I'm one that I don't like contracts that are, people tread on them anyway, but the only thing, Brian, that I won't take out, the only non-negotiable is the liability clause.
Right.
Would you agree?
I definitely would, yes.
Yeah. It's just you have to have some limit either to the services they pay per month or something. We're small businesses, and most of the customers we deal with, they're bigger than us. They have more money, and they always have better lawyers. So that's really, I'll almost bend on anything else, but we try to have a non-compete, non-disclosure, and that legal language to protect us from risk. But other than that, I'll change most anything.
I mean, and to add to that, I mean, basically you're selling them insurance for their business to make sure their IT runs smoothly, but you need your insurance as well to make sure that you're not going to be going out of business.
Absolutely. So you should you should have that in your contract, and you should also be insured, right, with your insurance. So a couple other questions I want to try to get to. They're good questions. Hey, we have some churn sometimes for no apparent reason other than the internal person, or they think we're more expensive than somebody. I get you have some churn, and what should the expected churn over 5 years should be? So Ron, here's what I would say. Every business has churn. Just because once you've had people for a certain amount of time, there's a business cycle, and ownership changes, and companies go out of business, and leadership changes. But really, if you're doing things right, reframing is not a sales tactic. Reframing starts in the sales process, but it's ongoing. They need to see the reason that they pay you is to get the better results, not based on tickets and time. If you are justifying your costs by meeting with people and showing them how many tickets you answered and being happy if it's more and not less and how much time you spent, you're going the wrong way. It should be the exact opposite of driving down their tickets per month, how often they're people, and all the things. You should be focused on all the things you're doing proactively, specifically around that role that I talked about in order to get people there. So one, that's how you build that value. And I can tell you, if you have someone whose job it is to do that, they very rarely leave because they found someone cheaper. But you will have some churn. And I would say, I have members that annually, I don't look at it over 5 years, but annually they churn as little as 5%. Probably a lot of them are in the 5 to 10%. You definitely don't ever want it to go. When you get above 10, you get to 15%. There's usually some other issue, Brian. If you're churning more than getting towards or above 15%, that would be an issue. Oh, here's a great question. What's the best way to go back to customers that you priced too low? Tim, it's just like what we talked about today, is that if you price them too low, you can't deliver the end result that your other clients get that are priced right. So think of it that way. It's just like this. Here's what you can't do. You can't go back and say, I priced you too low. I want to charge you more for the same results. I wouldn't be interested in that, Brian, if one of my vendors came to me. But if they came back and said, listen, you're paying $1,500 a month. We need to charge you $2,000. That's what we charge our other customers. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you what we bundle in. Let me tell you what our process is. Let me tell you what they experience compared to you. Now you can have the same conversation with them, and they trust you that you're having with a prospect. So it actually gets easier, not harder. People think it's harder with customers, but it doesn't have to be. So that's it. Someone asked, can you show what you get for $349? Kim, if you just send that email and you have a question, Gary.promo@TruMethods.com, someone from my team will reach out and have a conversation rather than have to review it with you. We are over the hour. If there's any questions I didn't get to, go ahead and send the questions to Gary.promo, even if it's a question, and me or someone from my team will make sure we answer them all. So, hey, Brian, this was a lot of fun.
Definitely, always is.
Sales@QuoteWerks.com. And I want to close by saying this. If you are not using a quoting tool, if you're not using QuoteWerks today, you at least have to have a conversation with someone from Brian's team, and that's coming from probably a 15 or 16-year customer in 2 different businesses.
Thank you for that, Gary.
It's from the heart, buddy. All right. Again, we recorded this and we'll send it out. Brian, thanks so much for co-hosting today. Thanks for bringing our communities together and offering, hopefully, what people can leave this and actually do something different in their business.
Thank you.
Make it a great day.